The crystal spires of Zephyria Prime stretched toward twin suns, their surfaces gleaming with an ethereal blue light that had once symbolized peace across the galaxy. Ambassador Kethavar stood on the observation deck of the Planetary Defense Station, watching as another wave of Void Ravager ships emerged from dark space. The insectoid creatures had been systematically consuming worlds for 3 cycles now, and Zephyria was next. "Any word from the Terran delegation?" asked Commander Silnara, her forearms trembling slightly as she adjusted the communication array. Her species, the Velthari, were known throughout the galaxy for their diplomatic prowess, but even their silver tongues couldn't negotiate with the Ravagers. Kethavar's translucent skin flickered with nervous patterns. "They should arrive within the hour. The Galactic Council was very specific about Earth's unique qualifications for this situation." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Earth had been discovered only 50 standard years ago, and the initial contact reports had been disturbing. The humans lived on what could only be described as a death world, a planet where nearly everything was designed to kill them. Poisonous atmosphere by some species' standards, crushing gravity, violent weather patterns, and predators that would give seasoned space marines nightmares. "I still don't understand why the Council thinks these Deathworlders can help us," Silnara muttered, her primary arms working frantically on tactical displays while her secondary hands managed communication channels. "Their military technology is centuries behind ours. They've barely achieved faster-than-light travel." Kethavar pulled up the human files on his personal display. The images still made him uncomfortable. Humans were bipedal, like many species, but there was something unsettling about their forward-facing eyes and the way they showed their teeth when expressing pleasure. Their planet's gravity was nearly twice that of most civilized worlds, and their star bombarded them with radiation that would be lethal to most species. "Perhaps it's not their technology the Council is interested in," he mused, reading through the cultural reports. "Look at this. They have over 200 active military conflicts happening simultaneously on their homeworld. They've been fighting each other continuously for their entire recorded history." "That's exactly why I'm concerned," Silnara replied, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of stress. "We're asking barbarians to help us with a sophisticated military problem. What's next? Asking them to perform stellar engineering." The communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Silnara's primary hands danced across the controls, and a holographic image materialized in the center of the command deck. The figure that appeared was undeniably human, average height by galactic standards, but with the characteristic broad shoulders and dense bone structure that came from evolving on a high-gravity world. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force," the human said, her voice carrying an edge that made both aliens unconsciously step back. "We've received your distress call and are approaching your position. Request permission to dock and discuss tactical options." Kethavar quickly composed himself and activated his own transmitter. "Permission granted, Admiral Chen. We're grateful for your assistance." There was something in the human's smile that made his skin pattern shift to deep purple, a color his species associated with danger. "Don't thank us yet, Ambassador. We haven't even seen what we're dealing with." The Terran ship that docked with their station was unlike anything in the Galactic Fleet Registry. Where most vessels prioritized elegant curves and energy efficiency, the human craft looked like it had been designed by someone who expected to be shot at regularly. Angular armor plating, redundant systems visible through the hull, and weapon hardpoints that spoke of a species that had learned to fight before they'd learned to fly. Admiral Chen entered the docking bay, wearing what appeared to be a modified environmental suit, though she removed the helmet to reveal short black hair and those unsettling forward-facing eyes. Behind her came a small team of humans, each carrying equipment that looked distinctly more primitive than standard galactic technology, but somehow more purposeful. "Admiral," Kethvar began, extending his greeting appendage in the traditional Zephyrian manner. "I am Ambassador Kethvar, and this is Commander Silnara. We represent the combined defense forces of the Zephyria system." Chen nodded once, a gesture that seemed somehow military despite its simplicity. "I've reviewed your tactical reports on the way in. These void ravagers, they consume organic matter to fuel their ships?" "That's correct," Silnara answered, her secondary hands pulling up holographic displays of Ravager vessels. "They strip mine entire biospheres, converting all organic material into some kind of biofuel. Their ships are partially alive, which makes them resistant to most energy weapons." One of Chen's team members, a man with intricate markings on his dark skin, stepped forward. "Ma'am, if I may, this looks similar to the Kepler incident from 20 years back." Chen's expression darkened. "Not in front of our hosts, Colonel Martinez. Let's keep our tactical discussions internal for now." She turned back to the aliens. "We'll need to see these creatures in action. Is there somewhere we can observe their attack patterns without exposing your station to unnecessary risk?" Kethvar exchanged glances with Silnara. Most species would have requested detailed sensor data, tactical analyses, computer simulations. The humans wanted to watch the enemy directly, like predators studying prey. "We have a forward observation post on Zephyria's third moon," Silnara offered. "It's heavily shielded and should provide an excellent view of their approach patterns." "Perfect," Chen said. "We'll take our ship. I want my team to see this firsthand." As the humans returned to their vessel, Kethvar couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. The Galactic Council had insisted that Earth's warriors were their best hope against the Ravagers. But these creatures seemed more like barely controlled savages than the sophisticated military minds they needed. The observation post on Zephyria's third moon was a marvel of Velthari engineering, its crystalline walls nearly invisible against the lunar surface. From here, they could watch the Ravager fleet as it moved through the outer system like a dark plague, consuming everything in its path. Admiral Chen stood at the main observation port, her team spread around the room with various pieces of equipment. They'd been watching for 2 hours now, occasionally making notes or speaking in low voices that their universal translators couldn't quite pick up. "They move like a pack," one of the humans observed, a woman with short blonde hair and scars on her hands. "See how the smaller ships scout ahead while the larger ones follow? They're hunting." "Definitely biological ships," added Martinez. "Look at the way they pulse and change direction. No mechanical vessel moves like that." Chen nodded slowly, her eyes tracking the movement of the massive Ravager bioships as they stripped the outer planets of anything organic. "How many worlds have they consumed so far?" 17 systems, Kethvar replied, his skin patterns shifting to deep red with grief. "Billions of lives. They don't take prisoners, don't negotiate, they simply feed." "And your conventional weapons?" Chen asked. Silnara activated a holographic display showing previous battle footage. "Energy weapons barely scratch their hulls. Kinetic projectiles are absorbed and converted to fuel. They adapt to every weapon system we deploy within hours." The humans watched the footage in silence, their expressions unreadable. Finally, Chen spoke. "Have you tried fire?" The question was so unexpected that Kethvar's translator requested clarification. "I'm sorry, Admiral, could you repeat that?" "Fire," Chen said again, as if it were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. "Combustion, chemical reactions producing heat and light." Silnara's 4 arms gestured in confusion. "That's a very primitive approach, Admiral. Fire is what pre-space civilizations used for light and warmth. It's hardly a military weapon." Something shifted in Chen's expression, and for a moment, both aliens caught a glimpse of something that made their evolutionary instincts scream warnings. It was the look of a predator that had just figured out how to reach its prey. "Colonel Martinez," she said quietly, "remember what we learned about biological compounds and rapid oxidation during the Titan expedition?" "Yes, ma'am," Martinez replied, his own expression taking on that same predatory quality. "Organic matter tends to be highly combustible under the right conditions." Chen turned to face the aliens directly, and Kethavar noticed that all the humans in the room had gone very still in a way that reminded him of documentary footage he'd seen of Earth predators preparing to strike. "Ambassador, Commander," Chen said, her voice carrying a tone that made both aliens unconsciously step backward, "I think we need to have a conversation about human warfare doctrine, specifically what we do to things that threaten our species." The largest Ravager bioship had just finished consuming Zephiria's fourth planet, its grotesque form swelling as it processed countless tons of organic matter. The sight should have filled Chen with horror, but instead, she found herself calculating fuel loads and combustion ratios. "These creatures made a serious mistake," she said, more to herself than to the aliens. "What mistake?" Kethvar asked, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Chen's smile was the kind that had once made Earth's apex predators think twice about their hunting choices. "They decided to threaten humans." Behind her, the rest of her team was already making preparations, their movements carrying the fluid efficiency of predators who had found their prey. The aliens might have expected help, but what they were about to witness was something far more dangerous than mere assistance. They were about to see what happened when a species that had spent millions of years learning to kill everything on a death world decided that something else needed to die. The human preparations were unlike anything Kethavar had ever witnessed. While most galactic species approached warfare with sophisticated computer models and elegant weapon systems, the humans seemed to be planning something that looked disturbingly primitive. They'd returned to their ship and emerged with containers that, according to their labels, held various chemical compounds. "What exactly are you planning, Admiral?" Silnara asked, watching as human technicians assembled what appeared to be crude delivery systems. Admiral Chen looked up from a tablet, displaying chemical formulas that would have been considered obsolete by most civilizations. "We're going to introduce the Ravagers to one of humanity's oldest friends." Colonel Martinez approached, carrying a sealed container. "Ma'am, we've confirmed the composition of their bioships. 90% organic polymers, high carbon content, natural oils throughout the structure for flexibility. It's basically a floating forest." Chen's expression grew more predatory. "Perfect. What's our delivery option?" "Standard kinetic projectiles, but modified," replied the blonde woman who'd introduced herself as Captain Torres. "Instead of explosive warheads, we're loading them with incendiary compounds. White phosphorus, thermite, and a few other gifts from Earth's chemistry set." Kethvar's translator worked overtime trying to process the unfamiliar terms. "Admiral, I'm not familiar with these weapon types. Are they some form of advanced energy discharge?" The humans exchanged glances, and Martinez actually chuckled. "Not exactly, Ambassador. These are what we call low-tech solutions to high-tech problems." Chen activated a holographic display showing the molecular structure of the Ravager ships. "Your energy weapons fail because their biological systems adapt to the energy frequency and develop resistance. Kinetic weapons get absorbed because the organic matrix can redistribute impact force. But fire—" She paused, highlighting the carbon-based compounds throughout the enemy vessels. "Fire doesn't care how advanced you are." Captain Torres pulled up Earth historical files on her tablet. "Admiral, should we show them the Tokyo footage?" "Not yet," Chen replied. "Let's start with something smaller scale." The preparation continued for hours. Humans moved with an efficiency that spoke of countless similar preparations throughout their species' history. They loaded their primitive projectiles with chemicals that most spacefaring races had abandoned millennia ago, treating the process with a reverence that made the aliens increasingly uncomfortable. "I don't understand," Silnara finally said. "These are just chemical reactions. How can they possibly be effective against ships that have consumed entire worlds?" Martinez looked up from his work, his scarred hands steady as he calibrated delivery systems. "Ma'am, have you ever seen what happens when you introduce an uncontrolled combustion reaction to a high-oxygen environment filled with organic compounds?" Before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the observation post. The Ravager fleet had finished consuming the outer planets and was now approaching Zephyria Prime itself. The massive bioships moved through space like living nightmares, their hulls pulsing with the absorbed life force of entire worlds. "Time to move," Chen announced. "Torres, get us back to the ship. Martinez, I want those packages ready for deployment in 20 minutes. The human vessel detached from the observation post with surprising speed. Unlike the elegant acceleration curves of most galactic ships, the human craft seemed to leap forward like a predator lunging at prey. Kethvar and Silnara had been invited aboard to observe, though they were beginning to question the wisdom of that decision. The bridge of the human ship was a study in controlled chaos. Multiple crew members worked at stations that seemed designed for combat rather than exploration, their movements carrying the precise efficiency of a species that had turned warfare into an art form. Admiral Chen took her position at the center of it all, her presence somehow making the already tense atmosphere even more charged. "Tactical assessment," she commanded. 17 bioships, largest approximately 8 kilometers in length, reported a crew member. "They're maintaining formation around the primary vessel while smaller craft scout ahead." "Composition analysis confirms earlier readings," added another. "High organic content throughout all vessels. They're basically flying fuel dumps." Chen nodded slowly. "Perfect. Begin approach vector. I want to get close enough to ensure maximum dispersal." Kethvar watched the tactical displays with growing alarm. "Admiral, you're taking us directly into their formation. Shouldn't we maintain distance and use long-range weapons?" "Range isn't the issue," Chen replied, without taking her eyes off the display. "We need to make sure our gifts are properly delivered." The human ship approached the Ravager fleet with what seemed like suicidal directness. The bioships began to respond, their living hulls rippling as they prepared to intercept the newcomers. Smaller Ravager craft peeled off from the main formation, approaching the human vessel with predatory grace. "First contact in 30 seconds, reported the tactical officer. "Deploy packages on my mark," Chen ordered. Her crew's responses carried the calm efficiency of people who'd done this before. The smaller Ravager craft reached them first, their biological weapons systems preparing to fire the energy-draining attacks that had devastated countless galactic fleets. But instead of responding with energy weapons, the human ship did something unexpected. "Mark," Chen said quietly. What happened next would be discussed in galactic military academies for centuries to come. The human ship launched what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles, primitive by any civilized standard. The Ravagers attempted to absorb them as they had countless other attacks, their biohulls opening to accept and convert the incoming energy. That was their first mistake. The projectiles didn't explode in the conventional sense. Instead, they split open upon impact, releasing their chemical payloads directly into the organic systems of the Ravager ships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the first bioship began to burn. It started as a small glow deep within the vessel's hull, barely visible against the creature's natural bioluminescence. But within seconds, the glow became a fire, and the fire became an inferno. The organic compounds that made the ship flexible and adaptive became its doom, feeding a combustion reaction that spread through the vessel like wildfire through a dry forest. "My God," whispered Silnara, watching as the first Ravager vessel was consumed by flames that burned in the vacuum of space, fueled by the ship's own atmosphere and organic structure. But that was just the beginning. The burning ship, panicking and out of control, crashed into its nearest neighbor. The fire spread instantly to the second vessel, then to a third. The Ravagers' pack hunting formation, which had been their strength, suddenly became their weakness as the flames jumped from ship to ship like a plague. "Torres, deploy the secondary packages," Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting before them. The second wave of projectiles carried different gifts, compounds that would continue burning even in low-oxygen environments, chemicals that would spread the reaction to any organic matter they encountered. The humans had turned the Ravagers' own biological nature against them. "Admiral," Kethvar said, his voice barely above a whisper, "how is this possible? Fire can't burn in space." Martinez looked over from his station, his expression grim. "It's not burning in space, sir. It's burning inside their ships, consuming their atmosphere, their organic hull matrix, everything they've absorbed from the worlds they've devoured. We're just giving it a little help to get started." The largest Ravager bioship, the one that had consumed Zephyria's outer worlds, began to glow as the fire reached its core systems. The creature's screams were transmitted through subspace, a sound of pure agony that made every sentient being in the system feel sick. "Jesus," muttered one of the human crew members. "It's still alive in there." Chen's expression didn't change. "Good. Maybe the next swarm will think twice before threatening human allies." Within an hour, the entire Ravager fleet was burning. The bioships writhed in space like dying animals, their screams echoing through subspace as they consumed themselves from within. Some tried to flee, but the fire had spread too far, consuming their propulsion systems along with everything else. Captain Torres looked up from her station. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the surviving Ravager vessels. They're begging." "Translation?" Chen asked. "They're offering to leave, to never return to this system. They're promising to avoid any world under human protection." Chen considered this for a long moment while the fires continued to rage around them. Finally, she nodded. "Open a channel." The main screen flickered to life, showing the grotesque interior of a burning Ravager ship. The creature at the center was barely recognizable as a living being, its form distorted by pain and terror. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force," she said, her voice carrying across the void. "You came here to feed. Instead, you've learned what happens when you threaten species under human protection." The Ravager's response was a mixture of clicks, hisses, and harmonics that the translator struggled to process. "Please, stop the burning. We will leave, never return." Chen's smile was cold. "You'll leave, yes. And you'll carry a message to the rest of your kind. Tell them that humans don't just defend themselves. We defend our friends. And we have a very long memory for anyone who threatens people we care about." She gestured to Torres, who cut the transmission. Around them, the last of the Ravager fleet burned itself to death in the cold vacuum of space, their biohulls providing fuel for fires that would burn for days. Kethvar and Silnara stood in stunned silence, watching as the nightmare that had consumed 17 systems died screaming in the void. The humans around them continued their work with calm efficiency, as if setting entire fleets on fire was just another day at the office. "Admiral," Kethvar finally managed to say, "I think I understand now why the Galactic Council sent for Earth." Chen nodded, watching the fires burn. "The galaxy has rules about warfare. Elegant weapons, sophisticated tactics, civilized approaches to conflict. But sometimes you need someone who's willing to break those rules." She turned to face the aliens, and in her eyes they saw something that would haunt their dreams for years to come. the calm certainty of a predator that knew it sat at the top of the food chain. Sometimes, she continued, you need someone who remembers that the oldest weapon in the universe is still fire. 3 months after the Zephyria incident, as galactic historians would later call it, the ripple effects were still spreading throughout known space. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the Galactic Council's primary diplomatic facility, watching as representatives from dozens of species requested audiences with the Terran delegation. "Admiral," said Captain Torres, approaching with a data tablet, "we've got another 17 requests for defense agreements. The Altarian Confederation is offering exclusive mining rights to their lithium worlds in exchange for protection. The Keeper Collective wants to hire us as military advisors." Chen took the tablet and scrolled through the requests. In the month since they'd introduced the Ravagers to humanity's ancient friend, every major civilization in the galaxy had suddenly become very interested in establishing formal relationships with Earth. Some offered trade agreements, others technology exchanges, but all of them carried the same underlying message: please don't ever do that to us. "Any word from the Ravager territories?" she asked. Torres nodded grimly. "Long-range scouts report massive changes in their behavior patterns. They're avoiding any system with even minimal human presence. Some hives have actually abandoned conquered worlds when they detected human ships in neighboring sectors." The door to the observation lounge opened, and Kethvar entered. His skin patterns cycling through what Chen had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of nervous excitement. Behind him came Silnara and several other alien representatives that Chen didn't immediately recognize. "Admiral Chen," Kethvar began, extending his greeting appendage, "I'd like you to meet some friends. This is High Commander Vexitari of the Hegemony Defense Force, Ambassador Quintel from the Spiral Confederation, and War Leader Court from the Savage Clans." Chen raised an eyebrow at the last introduction. "The Savage Clans? I thought they were isolationist." Court stepped forward, revealing himself to be a massive, heavily armored being with what appeared to be natural weapons built into his anatomy. When he spoke, his voice carried the rumble of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We were, until we saw the recordings of what you did to the Ravagers. My people have fought these creatures for 2 centuries. We thought we understood warfare." He paused, his 4 eyes focusing intently on Chen. "We were wrong." High Commander Vextari, an insectoid being with crystalline exoskeleton, stepped forward. "Admiral, my species has been military specialist for over 3,000 years. We've studied every known form of combat, developed weapons that can crack planets and shields that can withstand stellar flares." She clicked her mandibles in what Chen's cultural briefing had indicated was deep respect. "But what your species did, we never considered that ancient methods could be so effective." Chen gestured for the group to join her at the observation port, where they could see the steady stream of ships arriving at Harmony Station. "We didn't do anything special. We just used the tools we had available." "Tools?" Ambassador Quintel's voice carried harmonics that suggested confusion. "Admiral, you destroyed an entire fleet using what amounts to controlled chemical reactions. Most species abandoned such primitive methods before they achieved spaceflight." "That's exactly why it worked," Chen replied, watching as a Velthari diplomatic vessel docked with the station. "Everyone in the galaxy has spent millennia developing defenses against energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, quantum disruption fields. No one thought to defend against fire." War Leader Court's laughter was a sound like grinding stone. "Fire, the first tool of civilization, and it turns out to be the most terrifying weapon in the galaxy." Colonel Martinez joined the group, carrying a case that made several of the aliens unconsciously step back. "Admiral, the demonstration materials are ready if you want to proceed with the briefing." Chen nodded. "Gentlemen, ladies, distinguished beings, you asked to understand human military doctrine. Martinez, show them the basics." What followed was perhaps the most unusual weapons demonstration in galactic history. Martinez opened his case to reveal what appeared to be primitive chemical compounds, simple ignition devices, and delivery systems that looked crude compared to standard galactic technology. But as he explained the principles behind each item, the alien representatives grew increasingly quiet. "This is white phosphorus," Martinez said, holding up a sealed container. "Burns at over 1500 degrees and can't be extinguished with water. It sticks to organic tissue and continues burning until the oxygen supply is exhausted." Kethvar's skin patterns cycled to deep purple. "That's horrifying." "This is thermite," Martinez continued, moving to the next sample. "Iron oxide and aluminum powder. Simple chemistry, but it burns hot enough to cut through ship hulls. The reaction is self-sustaining and produces its own oxygen. And this," he said, lifting a final container, "is napalm, petroleum-based incendiary that adheres to surfaces and burns for extended periods. Humans developed it for fighting other humans, but it works just as well on alien bioships." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, High Commander Vexitari spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your species developed these weapons for fighting each other?" Chen nodded matter-of-factly. "Humans have been at war for our entire recorded history. We've had thousands of years to perfect the art of making things burn, explode, or die efficiently." War Leader Court leaned forward, his massive form somehow managing to look fascinated and terrified simultaneously. "How many different ways can your species kill?" Martinez and Chen exchanged glances. "That's a complicated question," Martinez said finally. "We stopped counting somewhere around 10,000 distinct methods. That was before we added space-age materials to our chemistry set." Ambassador Quintel's harmonics shifted to what Chen's briefing materials indicated was existential dread. "Admiral, may I ask why your species is so proficient at warfare?" Chen looked out at the peaceful diplomatic station, then back at the assembled aliens. "Because we come from a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us. Earth doesn't just have predators. It is a predator. Every day was a fight for survival against creatures that could crush us, poison us, or eat us alive. The weather tried to kill us. The geography tried to kill us. Even the plants tried to kill us." She paused, letting that sink in. "We didn't develop advanced weapons because we're naturally violent. We developed them because everything else on our world was trying to develop better ways to kill us first. It was an arms race that lasted millions of years." Captain Torres approached the group with another data tablet. "Admiral, we've got incoming priority transmission from Earth Command." Chen took the tablet and read the message, her expression growing serious. "It seems we have another situation. A species called the Devourer Empire has been expanding into the Outer Rim territories. They're not biological like the Ravagers, but they use quantum phase weapons that can disintegrate matter at the subatomic level." The alien representatives exchanged worried glances. High Commander Vexitari clicked her mandibles rapidly. "The Devourers have been unstoppable for the past decade. They've consumed 47 systems. Their quantum weapons ignore all known defensive measures." "Quantum phase technology," Court added grimly. "They can phase their weapons to bypass any shield, any armor, any defense we've developed. Nothing can stop them." Chen smiled, and once again, every alien in the room felt their evolutionary instincts screaming warnings. Nothing quantum, maybe. But quantum weapons have a weakness that their designers never considered. "Which is?" Ambassador Quintel asked, though his harmonics suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "They're designed to work against advanced civilizations," Chen replied. "Species that use energy shields, quantum armor, phase-shifted hulls. They're not designed to work against something simple." Martinez was already pulling up files on his tablet. "Admiral, are you thinking about the Australian solution?" The Australian solution? Kethvar asked. Chen's grin became positively predatory. During Earth's colonial period, we had a problem with rabbits in Australia. They were introduced accidentally and began reproducing faster than the ecosystem could handle. So we introduced their natural predator, myxomatosis, a virus that specifically targeted rabbits. I don't understand the relevance, Silnara said. The Devourers use quantum technology for everything. Their ships, their weapons, their defenses. But quantum systems require perfect isolation from outside interference to function properly. Chen pulled up technical specifications on her tablet. What happens when you introduce a classical physics problem to a quantum system? Martinez answered, quantum decoherence. The system breaks down at the fundamental level. Exactly. We're going to introduce the Devourers to humanity's second oldest friend. What's the second oldest? Torres asked. Chen's smile would have made a great white shark proud. Kinetic energy. Specifically, rocks thrown really hard. The plan that emerged over the following hours was so elegantly simple that it horrified every advanced civilization in the galaxy. While the Devourers had spent centuries perfecting quantum phase technology that could bypass any sophisticated defense, they'd never considered the possibility of an enemy using weapons that operated on pure classical physics. We're going to shoot them with railguns, Torres explained to the assembled alien representatives. Electromagnetically accelerated projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. No quantum components, no phase technology, no advanced systems at all. Just chunks of dense metal moving really fast. But surely their shields will stop kinetic projectiles, protested High Commander Vexistari. Their shields are designed to phase quantum attacks around their ships, Martinez replied. But you can't phase around a solid object traveling at relativistic speeds. Physics doesn't work that way. Kethvar's skin patterns were cycling rapidly between colors that indicated confusion and terror. You're going to attack the most advanced military force in the galaxy with rocks? Very fast rocks, Chen corrected. Rocks that hit with the force of tactical nuclear weapons. Rocks that can't be phased, can't be deflected by quantum fields, and can't be stopped by anything short of multiple meters of solid matter. War Leader Court's laughter shook the observation deck. Your species is insane. I like that. The demonstration came 2 weeks later, when a Devourer scout force entered the Kepler system. Confident in their quantum superiority, they encountered what appeared to be a single human frigate, outdated by galactic standards and armed with what registered as primitive kinetic weapons. The Devourers' first mistake was assuming that primitive meant ineffective. Their second mistake was trying to use quantum phase shields against projectiles that didn't care about quantum mechanics. The human frigate opened fire with weapons that would have been familiar to 21st century Earth. Railguns, albeit powered by fusion reactors and firing projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The Devourer ships tried to phase the incoming projectiles around their hulls, but found themselves facing an uncomfortable reality of classical physics. You can't phase around something that's simply moving through space at enormous velocity. The first Devourer ship disintegrated when a tungsten rod traveling at 15% of light speed passed through its hull like it wasn't there. The quantum phase generators that should have protected it simply couldn't process an attack that operated on purely classical principles. The second ship lasted long enough to send a distress call before a spread of kinetic projectiles turned it into expanding vapor. The third ship tried to retreat, but discovered that quantum phase drives have limitations when your power systems have been reduced to component atoms by relativistic tungsten. Word of the incident spread through both the Devourer Empire and the galactic community within hours. The species that had terrorized the Outer Rim with unstoppable quantum technology had been defeated by what amounted to throwing rocks very, very hard. Standing on Harmony Station 3 days later, Admiral Chen watched as another stream of diplomatic vessels arrived, their holds full of trade offers and defense requests. In the distance, she could see construction beginning on the first Human Defense Coordination Facility, a joint project between Earth and the Galactic Council. "Admiral," Captain Torres said, approaching with yet another data tablet, "we've got a request from the Devourer Empire. They're asking for a ceasefire and offering to share their quantum technology in exchange for a non-aggression pact." Chen took the tablet and read through the terms. "Acceptable. Make sure the agreement includes provisions for defending our allies." Kethvar approached, his skin patterns now cycling through what Chen had learned indicated deep respect and healthy fear. "Admiral, I have to ask, how many more surprises does humanity have in store?" Chen looked out at the galaxy beyond the station, thinking of the thousands of ways her species had learned to survive on a world that had spent billions of years trying to kill them. Fire, kinetic energy, chemical reactions, biological warfare, nuclear physics, quantum mechanics, each one a tool in humanity's vast arsenal, developed through millions of years of evolutionary pressure. "Kethvar," she said finally, "we've been fighting for our survival since before we had language. Every threat we've ever faced, we've found a way to defeat, destroy, or turn to our advantage. The Ravagers and Devourers were just the beginning." She smiled, and once again, every alien on the station felt a chill run through their evolutionary consciousness. "The galaxy expected help when they called us. What they got was 4 billion years of accumulated experience in making their problems go away permanently. In the depths of space, scattered across hundreds of systems, other potential threats to galactic peace began reconsidering their expansion plans. Word had spread through the interstellar community with remarkable speed. There was a new species in the galaxy, one that came from a world so hostile that it had turned them into living weapons, and they were very, very good at making their friends' enemies disappear.